Hello and welcome to another episode of Straight Talk. Now, this is not the comforting voice of Nikki Shields or the appearance if you're watching on YouTube. This is me, Saunders CB. I'm taking over today instead of Nikki Shields, but I'm sure she won't mind too much seeing as we are colleagues on Formula E. So, today is a different sort of podcast, but if you have been a fan of the podcast or listened or watched for a long time, the OGs, if you will, you might recommend or might remember the 11Zs with Engineers episode that Jerome D'Ambrosio presented, where we asked members of the team questions that were sent in by social media and fans of Mahindra, and we're going to do the same again today. But I can't do it on my own. I need some very talented individuals around me to answer these questions. So if you will, could you go around and introduce yourselves, name and what you do in Mahindra?
I'm Dilbag and I'm the boss.
I like it.
My name is Joseph Dollar and I'm the performance engineer of Jérôme.
My name is Cyril Blay and I'm the race engineer for Pascal Wehrlein.
My name's Tom Davis and I'm the race engineer for Jerome.
My name is Vinit Patel. I work for talent and recruitment and special projects.
My name's Angus Lyon and I'm the head of the powertrain.
So that was very brief, very quick introductions. I need to dive a little bit deeper. I think people want to know a little bit more about what those jobs entail. So let's start with Cyril, Pascal's engineer. Tell me what that's like being Pascal Wehrlein's race engineer.
It's challenging. No, basically I'm the first interaction between the drivers. So when we go on track, he's got a series of engineers to look after him, but I'm his primarily target. All the communication from the drivers and the crew goes mainly by me. So we work closely together, and the role of the race engineers is to be able to extract the best out of the drivers and to be able to communicate. So after a while you get used to each other and you get this understanding. So the less we talk, the more we understand each other. And that's the main. No, but it's true. That's
excellent.
That's the main thing with the race engineers and the drivers, is to be able to understand each other, speak the same language, and be able to get the best out of each other. Without speaking too much. So the more efficient we are on track, the better we understand each other. The more I can extract from the car to give Pascal a good car, and vice versa. The best I can extract from him in terms of the driving, etc. And the best result we can achieve, which make the boss sometimes happy.
And this is obviously Pascal's second season. How is he? I know word settling in probably isn't the best thing to do, but how is he getting on now he's into his second full-fledged Formula E season?
Yeah, I think he's looking great. Obviously, this season is not the start that we were hoping, or I think deserved, but he's in good spirit. And obviously, being a rookie last year, it's undeniable that he's got really tremendous speed. He's a very fast driver. Dealing with energy this year is a bit more challenging because, as you know, this year the regulation have changed, so the race are a lot more based towards energy management. When last year it was the case, but because of Focus Yellow and I'm sure as you guys see the races, they were quite eventful. So last year we always had safety car, Focus Yellow, which make the race a little bit less biased towards energy management. When this year it's a much bigger challenge. So in that aspect, he's still learning. He's learned a lot from last year, but there's still a little bit of development to do. But we can see Pascal is getting very comfortable with the team now, and having the opportunity to work with him in the second year. Obviously, it's the foundation are there. So now we just need to deliver and get the result that we deserve.
So this is a question. This is probably a bit more technical. I want to know about powertrains, as I'm sure everybody listening does. Can you talk us through what your role is within the powertrain world of Formula E and Mahindra Racing, but also the aspects that make a powertrain and the getting the most of it out you can different to perhaps other motorsports where it doesn't exist?
So the powertrain itself is fairly simple. In principle, it's an electric motor with a fairly simple transmission system. The battery is obviously standard between all of the cars, so we all have exactly the same battery. When we're designing it, we're trying to get the best combination of something that gives us the performance. We have limited power coming out of the battery, so we've got to convert that electrical power into mechanical power to accelerate the car. Pardon me. The system must be efficient, it has to be light, and we've got to control it. So the first part is just designing that, developing that off-season. We can't change it through the season, so once we start racing, the powertrain can't change. The second part is what Cyril started talking about, is all the energy management. We don't have enough energy to run to the full duration of the race flat out. So we're having to take actions during the race to try and save energy without compromising lap time as much. So there's a lot of intelligence in what the drivers do and what the engineers do and what we do with the systems on the car to try and optimize the use of that energy. And it really is as simple as trying to get the car to the end of the race as fast as possible without using any more than the allocated amount of energy.
Okay, and this is definitely something that I've wondered as working on Formula E and also as a fan. I'm sure people watching and listening have thought the same thing. Formula E often gets referred to almost as close to being a spec series as it can. I know that's not strictly true, but how much is there within the powertrain that can actually be changed in order to get the most out of the car?
There's an awful lot. It's a spec in terms of the fact we've got fixed power, we've got fixed energy, but everything downstream of the battery, the motors, the electronics, the software, the gearbox, the differential, the rear of the car is entirely up to the teams. Now, obviously, we've all over the period of the 4 or 5 years that it's taken us to get to this point, we've all converged on, I wouldn't say identical, but quite similar powertrains. You know, back at the early part of the championship, we were 6-speed. We were it was what's got a longitudinal motor.
Mm-hmm.
All of the teams are now running a single-speed gearbox, but the detail, it's a bit like aerodynamics, that no one solution is right. So all the teams have honed in slightly different speeds, torques, masses, locations of components, as well as some of the detail of the materials. So there's quite a lot of difference, really. All the motors are unique. Nobody, apart from when there's a customer team, is running the same motor as any of the other teams. So in some ways, it is a bit like some of the other championships, where on the, you could say Formula One looks quite similar, but below the surface, the difference between the powertrains is quite significant. And then we also have to, no one race is the same. So when we're preparing for an event, these guys do an awful lot of preparation on the simulator here. And that's trying to work out and understand, taking our simulation data and what works for the drivers, what's going to be as fast as possible during that event.
Interesting. Thank you for the insight. So you talked then a little bit about the preparation that happens with it before a Formula E race, lots of sim work, lots of, strategy and data, that sort of thing. But then it comes to the race day, and it's a one-day race format. That comes with a whole heap of different challenges. Vinit, I want you to talk to me about the complex side of being an engineer in a one-day race format.
Yeah, Formula E is completely unique in this respect, and I think for all of us here around the table who've been in various other championships, bringing their experience here, it's a bit of a shock initially. It's a different type of challenge. The comments the race engineers made about that relationship with the driver becomes even more important, to almost second guess what you're each going to need and each going to want. Mm-hmm. And I think also the driver is even more key. So as mentioned, the cars are very similar in terms of a performance window. We control an important but relatively small aspect of that window. The driver becomes a psychological event in the car. So half of the job of the guys is technical, and half of the job is to make sure that we're getting the best out of them from a psychological point of view, making sure they're in the right frame of mind if they make a mistake, or if a mistake occurs, or if a red flag comes at the wrong time when they're preparing for a quick practice lap, bringing them quickly back to the baseline, saying, no, you're still in the right window, we're going to get the best out of you, come qualifying and come the race, don't worry, is a really important aspect. And I think you see that across the grid, where one weekend you have a driver that can dominate an event, and the next weekend they put a single toe over the line, and getting that day back to being a good one for them is very, very difficult. So for us as engineers, it's very rewarding because everything happens on the same day, and it's also massively frustrating at the same time, because a tiny little thing that could be completely out of your control upsets your day to the point where, okay, this one's not going to be for us anymore, and we have to wait till the next event. But you just have to focus on all the levels of preparation.
Interesting. And I want to just touch a little bit upon the infamous Jerome D'Ambrosio, a very experienced, a veteran in Formula E. You're his race engineer. What's he like? Is he a bit of pain in the bum, or is he good? Is he very pleasing to work with?
Tell the truth.
I've known Jerome for, it must be about 10 and a half years, because I remember GP2, we actually tested him end of 2009. And then he was a quick driver, knew what he wanted for sure, and he's got a reputation for that. But it's all positive, because you've got to drive him to use that in a very positive way, and try to filter it to make the car go quicker. So I wouldn't say difficult, but you can be very intense, which is good for the team. It makes sure that we're all doing our job. And then his experience, he's one of the most experienced drivers on the grid. So and we rely on that a lot. It gets it can get us into good situations and optimizes the opportunities that could come up during the race weekend. So yeah, I think it is all positive. That's it really.
What's he like? So we know what he's like as a driver. He's obviously very talented. His reputation precedes him. But what's he like as a person? He's a very cheeky chap, isn't he, Jerome D'Ambrosio? He's pulling pranks on people. I've seen the way that he sort of teases members of the team, and me especially as well on the grid. He teases me as well. So, I mean, what's he like from that point of view?
I haven't seen too many pranks. I know Beppe gets a few of the
We'll come to that in a second.
Yeah, gets a few sort of like jokes his way, but I haven't seen any pranks yet. He's always like when we're having a meal and everything, he's always chatting away, and he's always got some good stories. Obviously knows a lot what's going on in the paddock, so that's always good because he seems to know quite a bit of information that's going around. So can give us a bit of a hindsight into things. So I haven't seen any pranks though, so
I'm sure he will. Time will come. Joseph, I want to know about you're Jerome's performance engineer, right? So what, in a bit more detail, what does that job entail?
So yeah, I'm Jerome's performance engineer. I work with Tom, who is my race engineer. So basically, Tom is like the central point in our crew. I'm more related towards all about performance, so chassis. I also do quite a bit of driving with Jerome because obviously these days just a one-day race, so you have to make sure that all the aspects about driving, about systems. So I also work with Angus department. All the chassis is in the right window just to operate well during the whole day. Yes, so I'm more, let's say, looking after all this performance aspect, rather than Tom is more looking after the tires as well, and also the drivers, something that I don't really do, and also the crew, obviously, because we have 4 mechanics per car. So yeah, I work for Jerome for 2 years now. It's quite challenging, but honestly, it's really good. I mean, he's very different at the track and when we are outside of the track, but he's a really nice guy, and yeah, it's good to work with him.
What was your reaction when you were told that you were going to be his performance engineer?
So it was a bit particular for me because obviously my first year trackside was with Jerome, so I didn't really know what to expect. I think it was really good to start with Jerome because, as you said, he's an experienced driver, and he brings you a lot as an engineer because basically he knows where to orientate the performance of the team. So I think for me it was really good, obviously. And yeah, after it's, as Cyril said, I think it's just about knowing each other. At the track, as I say, he's very different. He knows exactly what he wants. So there are no friends at the track. It's just, okay, you need to put the performance there, and that's it. Rather than outside the track, it's more about, okay, yeah, let's go for a dinner. But honestly, he learned me a lot.
I imagine your job goes beyond, like, kind of what you were saying there, beyond the track, beyond the garage and the pit lane. You're sort of trying to get the best out of him and keeping him in a good mental spot away from the track as well. Is that almost more challenging than in the garage or not?
Yeah, I mean, at the end, I think as Vinit pointed it out, I mean, they are human beings. So, I think there are much more performance inside the mind than in the car at the end, because the car is just in the right window most of the time. And yeah, it's just putting the driver in the right place in his mind just to perform well. And this is a job that you need to do, like, probably at the track, but also outside the track at the end, They can't just perform well if it's just a job, I think it's more a passion for every of us. So yeah, this is definitely something that we are working outside the track as well. So I keep in contact like quite often, like every single week with him, trying to know what he's doing and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a constant work, honestly. Like you cannot stop, basically.
Interesting. And finally, but by no means least, the boss man, Dilbag, you get to oversee these guys do their jobs. How are they as a team?
Well, Saunders, I think we've sort of built something from scratch, yeah? So we started Mahindra Racing with no one. and we didn't know much about motorsport. And I'm really happy to put this crew together. Like Vin's been with me right from day one. I think he's sort of employee number 3. He joined us. He missed the first test in Donington, and since then he's been with us.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I think it's something amazing because Mahindra Racing, as I said, like we didn't have any pedigree in motorsport when we started, and now we are being a perpetual sort of contender in the last couple of years. And I think with this big step which we are doing in season 6 of bringing everything in house, we are sort of reaching a stage where we feel from season 7 onwards we'll be able to deliver a lot more consistency in a team, and that's been our biggest problem, is delivering consistency.
Okay. And Formula E is such a competitive championship, but you've got really strong teams coming from all over the globe, different manufacturers, customer teams. But Mahindra's always been up there. Every season there's been races where you've really stamped your mark on the championship. Is now we've gone into season 6 where there's even more manufacturers. It seems like everything has stepped up. Do you feel like that there's an added challenge there to really to get those same results you've had in previous seasons, or do you feel like stick with what you know and it will come?
No, we have to step up the game. I think everyone stepped up the game, and you can just see it in Marrakesh last week. Also, like what happened in season 5 to season 6, you can just see the amount of thing that like the speed is stepped up, the energy consumption is lower. So you can see that each team has actually done a lot of improvement, and that's something I think which we need to sort of focus on. So I'm really hoping on with our 2 race engineers sitting out here that there's no pressure on them, but I expect a lot more from these guys.
No pressure.
I think we have the package, we have the drivers, we have the car, etc. It's just at the moment I think we can deliver it, which could come in the next race, which I think we are going to be there.
Okay, great. So very conveniently, you've got 2 race engineers sitting opposite each other. And what I want to sort of dig into is there much of a rivalry between Team D'Ambrosio and Team Wehrlein on either side of the garage?
No,
I
not
haven't
at all.
seen it yet.
I don't believe it. I don't believe that for a second. Come on.
One team, one dream, isn't it?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the first rule in motorsport is you have to beat your teammate. So, I mean, we can be nice to each other. Obviously, we all work as a team. But as soon as the green light goes on, one of the first rules in motorsport is you have to beat your teammate, because it's the only other drivers in the grid that's got the same equipment as you. So, for sure, as soon as the race goes on, it's there's competition out there. We want to beat everybody else, and we also want to beat each other, but in a good manner. I think it's like constructive rivalry. That push the teams. It's the same with the drivers. They have to work together to get the best out of the team. There's no point hiding information. So the more open we are, the better it is for the team. We can make more progress. But obviously, when they're on track, the first thing they want to do is beat each other, and there's no difference for the race engineer. So let's be honest. No, but you know what I mean. It's for sure. If we can be 1-2, it's perfect. And obviously, if I'm P1, it's even better. But no, but it's true. The name of the game is to get the best result for the team. But also, we do that. It's a competitive environment, and we are competitors. So, and I think the driver is the same. They know the rules, that they have to beat the teammate, and use that as a challenge, as a motivation. So, but outside the track and even during the track, we will exchange, all the information. I don't have a huge amount of Formula experience, because that's only my second year. Tom, just joined us. So obviously, the best interest for the team is to work together. So until that moment when they turn up to 250 and they go for it, and it's up to them, we obviously work really well together, and there's no hiding information. After that, on track, obviously everybody wants to win, but only one car can do that, so one crew. So after that, it's may the best man win.
Yeah, and also there's a lot of people in the team that look after both cars as well. So obviously we are race engineers for cars 64 and 94, and we have our performance engineers, but most of the people in the team are actually looking after both cars. Okay. So I see it, and I think most people see it as a team, but then in qualifying, hopefully number 64 is in front of 94. But
love that.
So
brilliant. And so, I guess you kind of answered it there, but how much does any competition go into in terms of detail? I know the drivers are looking at each other and they're thinking, okay, he got a hundredth of a second quicker here, or this sector was a little bit quicker. Do you guys, as a team of engineers, say, okay, well, we did a tyre change practice and it was a half a second slower than these guys, so do it better next time? Or is it less than that? Does it kind of lead into what you were saying there, that those people might be on both teams?
Yeah, because really the only 2 people that are actually assigned to a car is the race engineer and the performance engineer. Everyone else is assigned across the whole team.
Sure.
So across the two cars. So when we're working on team, tyre changes aren't that often in Formula E, but when we're working on team aspects, then it is about making sure that, or from both sides, that person is doing the best they can, so both cars are given the best opportunity. So
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got some questions from Mahindra fans that we're going to get to in just a second. But before, I've got a question that I would like to know the answer to. Some of the drivers in Marrakesh, Jerome including, was telling me about the challenges of reading data from the wheel back to engineers whilst battling.
He's gone a lot better since he's wearing glasses. So
Excellent. Whilst battling, whilst trying to defend, etc. And I think that is a sort of aspect of Formula E that, yes, there is reading, tyre pressure, things like that from in other motorsports, but there is that whole added element of being so precise with, you say, like the state of charge, things like that. Is it as challenging and as pressurized on the garage side of that as much as it is for the team? Because obviously you've got other data in front of you to be telling back to the drivers. So I want to get a little bit of an insight on what that's like for you guys.
yeah, on my side, I find it quite challenging, to be honest, because there's a huge amount of information going back and forth, obviously, between the driver and the team. And it's even more challenging that most of this message or coded or whatever we use, energy code or whatever we might use, obviously. So we try to hide this information from the other team. So there's a huge amount of information going back and forth between the drivers and the team. And obviously you have to analyze how the race is going on, what's your strategy, what the other guys are doing, how to get the best out of it, how to make sure you do a better job than the other team. So try to understand and almost guess, what the next move will be, especially with the attack zone. There's kind of few strategy tool that we can use. So obviously, there's a lot of things going on at the back of the garage, but I think for the driver it's even more difficult. I'm always amazed when we go to a race or even in the simulator that Pascal can drive, at 200k, between walls and still giving me information that he reads from the steering wheel. So I guess in that aspect is a good thing that he's driving and I'm giving him information and not the other way around. So and also for the ballast, but that's that's an obvious question. But it's challenging. It's from on my side is quite different than what I'm used to do before. And it's very challenging, and obviously sometimes on TV people don't realize the complexity like is the case in every other series, but what's really going on in the background, it's a really massive chess, game of chess battle between teams and the drivers, and who can have the best strategy and hide your card, and come with the aces, at the end of the race and pull a good move and a good strategy. So there's a lot going on, but it's what makes Formula E also very, very interesting.
And Dilbag, just following on from that, when it comes to the energy management and strategy, things like that, say you've got an instance where there's one driver that feels that they've got a better grip of energy management on that track. How hard is it to manage that communication between the team and then into the cars? Because pressures are high, stress is high in the cockpit of a car, but there is a strategy, and it's one team, one dream, as it's already been said. How is it to make sure that gets through to the drivers?
Well, I think first we set the rules of engagement before the race. So we do try and look at every scenario, and depends on where we guys are starting. Other cars are going to be together during the race, or we expect them to be further apart. Unfortunately, sometimes the rules of engagement gets thrown out of the window once the visor comes down, and we have to remind them, okay, there are rules of engagement coming in. But I think in the end of the day, both our drivers are mature. They've been in like high fly motorsport for the last many years, so they do understand the bigger goal of the team. Yes, while they do have their personal goals, also trying to be the best on that particular day, they do in the end, I think, do shout, scream, and then you'll hear a few bleeps on the official recorder in terms of what they've been speaking about. But I think those bleeps do get deleted, and these guys do understand, okay, that it's in the best interest of the team to try and bring things forward. And Formula E, as you know, is more of a thing where you have to be a farmer rather than a hunter. You have to just keep farming points in this championship, and
yes,
these guys sort of realize that, okay, you just have to go get the 1s, 2s, 3s, and it all adds up in the end of the year in this championship. So you just don't have to go for glory all the time. And I think that's something which, especially I think Pascal's starting to come around, because last year when he came and he was out there pushing and wanted to sort of thing. And I think this year he sort of realized he has to sort of pick up each bit. But overall, I think the rules of engagement are pretty clear. These guys also work very well together. The engineers work well with each other. And then, yeah, I'm sitting out there to give the final instruction.
That's never a truer point said, that the idea that consistency in Formula E is massive. I did some calculations just for my own geeky fandom the other day. Was last season, if a driver had consistently got fourth place off the podium, they would have won the championship by 20 points. Which just says a lot, doesn't it? Just the idea that it is so hard to win a race and then match that win in the next race because of the qualifying system, everything like that. So, yeah, kudos to the drivers and to you guys, because that is a very challenging environment to race in. Shall we look at some social media questions?
Sure. Let's go for it.
I want to warm you up first, though, because I want some quick fire answers from you guys. I want it to be very energetic. Let's start with this. What did you have for breakfast?
No breakfast.
Breakfast.
Cornflakes.
Coffee and a cigarette.
Toast.
Granola.
Bran flakes.
Not bad, but I want it quicker. What's your spirit animal?
Sorry?
What's your spirit animal?
The Mahindra Bay.
Eagle.
Yeah, bear.
Rabbit.
Tiger.
Lion.
Okay, I want double time now. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Coffee for sure.
Coffee.
Tea.
Coffee.
Who's harder working, Pascal or Jerome?
None.
John.
Jerome.
Interesting.
Jerome.
Okay.
Jerome.
I'm going to say Pascal because they've all said Jerome.
Finally, who's the better driver?
I think I am.
Quicker. Who's the better driver?
No, I am.
Pascal.
Both the same.
Pascal.
Pepe.
Okay, there we go. There we go. Brilliant stuff. Well, I think we're well and truly warmed up.
Where Angus comes up is we had our local karting championship and Pepe awarded himself.
And then went off to do some more practicing afterwards because he wasn't competitive enough.
Excellent. I love it. Driving stays in the team. Love that. Okay, so let's get on to some fan questions. Fortunately, I have this rather lovely, if you're watching on YouTube, trophy here, which was for best social media activation. Lovely stuff. And we've got some questions inside it. So I'm going to pull some out and then we'll answer them.
This is only one of the two we won, okay?
One of the two. The second one I presented to you myself in the New York Gala.
Did you?
Last year, yeah. Or me and Jack Nichols, anyway.
I don't remember, but maybe there was a little bit of beverages.
Maybe a few, yeah. It was the end of the season, what can you expect? When there isn't a race weekend, does the driver test the car on a track privately with the team, or do they just drive on the sim?
We're limited by regulations how many test days we can do. So generally, all of the prep for races is done on the simulator, and we can try a lot more things. We can refine the track, especially if it's a new track. And when we do testing, it's mainly for the next generation of Mahindra car. So we'll soon start testing our Season 7 car in the next month or so.
Okay. All right, diving into the trophy for another question. And we have one from Jespar. How long does it take to charge the car once it's reached 0% after an E-Prix? On the floor, whoever answers first. Yeah, let's go with you.
Not the performance.
Pepe, no pressure. Come on.
This is for you, Joseph.
So yeah, I mean, this is more the job of the race engineer, but from what I understand,
They've
what I
given you the
understand,
mics.
an hour and 10 minutes. Yeah.
An hour and 10 minutes. Okay, interesting. Right, next question. This is from Sarah Turner. During qualifying, the driver's gloves are often checked by scrutineers. What are they looking for and why? Who wants to jump on this one?
I'm going to get in trouble for that. Obviously, we've got the new biometric gloves, which Pascal loves, by the way. So I think they're just checking that it's activated and it's working properly. But the driver hates it, and Pascal in particular. So he tries to get rid of them every chance he gets. So.
But I think from a health and safety perspective, it's a huge improvement in terms of what we're trying to do, and I think what FI is trying to do with these biometric gloves, because you start realizing what could be the impact of if a driver's had a crash, etc. In terms of like what we saw with Daniel Abt in Mexico. It is a glove which sort of gives the data. So even before the doctors get to the spot, there's already data transmitted back, and I think we should take this seriously in terms from a health and safety perspective. That it's really important that this is one of the championships where data is immediately transmitted back. So even those few minutes it takes or few seconds it takes to get to the driver, you already know potentially where the impact has been and what's the size of the impact. So I think what FI has done out here is amazing, and hats up to these initiatives. Yes, it does irritate a driver carrying 10 extra grams in the glove or whatever it is.
Pascal, if you're watching, the boss. You've been told.
But I think, in the end of the day, they will get used to it. And the first time when they see one of their colleagues sort of be getting the benefit of this, like what we saw with Daniel Abt, guys do realize that, this is a step in the right direction.
Because the technology that we see in Formula E has gone so far since the start of the championship. I mean, we've got the likes of the biometric gloves, but also things like driver's eye, which I know Jerome has had a few times in his helmet so far this season. How does he find that? Because as a fan or as Formula E, it's amazing to watch. It's such great insight. But as a driver, is it annoying or is it?
He hasn't complained about it, so I guess it's okay. So
Jerome enjoys the television time.
yeah.
He gets to that.
Yeah, good.
But from a fan's perspective, it's amazing, I think, to be able to have that sort of like insight to what the driver sees. So there's been no moaning, so I guess it's good.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting because you see kind of what we touched upon earlier, the amount of things that a driver has to do during a race, the amount they look around. And I think there's an interesting thing actually I've noticed with the older drivers or the drivers that have been in the championship for a bit longer or a bit more experienced. They seem to use their head a lot more than the younger drivers like the likes of Pascal. Where you see like Jerome and likes of Felipe Massa like this, left and right, looking in the mirrors, left and right. Whereas Pascal almost does it with his eyes. You know, is that an actual difference, or is that just habit?
I've not noticed that. It must be habit, or their neck muscles are given out. One or the other.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm over analysing it, but I always find it quite interesting, that driver's eye. Okay, next question. What's the most challenging aspect of Formula E? I think Dilbag, do you want to answer this one?
I think the most challenging aspect of Formula E is getting it right the first time around. The day is short. We need to sort of get the cars off right from FP1. When the car's unloaded, it needs to be within the window of performance. Otherwise, you're starting to chase the day, and then the day typically runs away from you. So I guess the preparation before the race weekend is getting increasingly important. So that's what I say is the challenge is the prep work which you guys do before we get there. Because once we get there, the day is literally like a blur. You get up in the morning, and before you know, the day's over in terms of stuff. And I think the quali, as you know, is really important. And now with the shuffled sort of grids which sort of come in, while quali is important, you also are looking at race performance going on. So we have to look far ahead in the day, despite it being a short day.
And from an engineer's point of view, I kind of want to know, obviously there's the bits the drivers find difficult, but what is the hardest part of your day?
I think it's what Dilbag just pointed out, is the fact that you cannot have a bad session or a bad day, the championship, when the race weekend is basically happening over several days. You can have a bad session and you can recover and you can take time to analyze the data and then try to make some changes and then come back, And in Formula E, you can't have a bad session, or because it's a bad day. A bad session means a bad day. And as soon as you start chasing your tail, then the weekend is over. You don't have time to think too much between sessions. You don't have time to do too much. We got only an hour and a half. So everything has to be well prepared, and we need to hit the ground running straight away. And like I said, we need to be in the window and then just go through little details. But as soon as that window, we missed it, and we start chasing our tail, the day is over. And normally it's the weekend, not the weekend, the day is a write-off, which turned out to be a weekend. So for me, that's the most challenging, is how little time you've got between session and how well you have to come prepared to the track, covering every scenario possible, and make sure that basically during the day you're just going through the motion and you're just basically ticking the boxes and make sure that the last little details, are covered. Any more than that, and you've missed the boat and you're out. So this is the big challenge for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It is all about the preparation before the event. So far we've all prepared well for the events I've been to, but if there's any hiccup in the actual event, I think you had it at Riyadh with your car and with the first FP1, then you're on the back foot then, and you don't really catch up just due to the competition that is around you. So it's making sure those hiccups don't happen, and being right up there.
And Joseph, as a performance engineer, if Jerome isn't in a good mental state, does that make your life very difficult on a race day?
Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest challenge for me. So basically, and now we have done quite a bit of preparation this year just to make the driver just in the right window, straight in FP1 for the first lap he does on the car. Definitely. As both race engineers said, and as Dilbag said, I think the fact that it's just a one-day race, a one-day event, it's super challenging because so many things evolve at the same time. like the the track grip, for example. You just have to be prepared and have your best guess in terms of setup, in terms of all the tricks that the driver needs to know about the track, where he can gain lap time, what he has to be careful about during the races, etc. He needs to apply this straight during the first laps in FP1. Otherwise, you know that the weekend is mostly done basically, so you cannot do much about it. So yeah, it's a lot of preparation, honestly. If you arrive not really prepared, you cannot do anything, honestly.
Interesting stuff. All right, let's dive back into the trophy of questions. And we have, how did you become a race engineer? What degree did you pursue? Open to anyone who wants to answer that one.
So first of all, I'd actually raced myself when I was a teenager. Did a bit of karting and car racing, and then went into university. Did a automotive degree at Oxford Brookes, and then became after that a design engineer. A long time ago, I'm trying to remember what I did. Then there was a composite design engineer, and then moved over to the racing side of the company I was working for.
Right.
That was GP2 and Formula Renault at the time.
Okay.
So, and then that was only something like 16, 17 years ago. So a long time ago.
And Vinit, we know you've been part of Mahindra for almost since day dot, but how did you get to that point?
Yeah, I think like most people around the table had wanted to do it from being very young, pursued a degree in engineering, and then it's the challenge is not qualifying for your degree. The challenge is getting the job, and to get the job in the beginning. And I think as many people, probably everyone around the table has done, you make certain sacrifices. It's either about moving away from home and family, potentially working for free, which is what I did for while I finished my studies, and that opened the door. And then I got my initial role as a race engineer in Formula 3. That lasted for almost a decade in Formula 3 and other junior single-seater championships. I then went into Formula 1 working on the Pirelli tyre project. And then when I decided that wasn't really a path for me, I jumped over to Formula E as soon as it became available. So haven't looked back. But yeah, if you're out there looking to get into the sport, engineering, numeric degrees. But in this championship, I've also got to say that we need to focus on people who are looking at electronics degrees, which is where Angus's background is. Computer science degrees. The electronic element of the car is the area we have the freedom over. So yeah, if you want to be like these guys, race engineering, performance engineering, you can go down the path that like Tom and I have just talked about. But if you want to get involved in the technology, go into those areas of education where you can be at the forefront of all of the new tech that's coming out now.
That's interesting that what you just mentioned there, but because you think the future of not just motorsport but for road cars is very much going down the lines of electric mobility. So I guess what would be really interesting to know is the idea, Angus, this is a question for you, is what do people need to be thinking about if they want to get into a job that revolves around powertrains and electronics and things like that within, say, something like Formula E?
There are two different ways you can go about it, because there's a lot of motorsport degrees out there at the moment, and certainly it's becoming probably harder to get a job in motorsport without a motorsport degree. Myself, I came through a more conventional route. I did just electronics, and actually some of the best design engineers, not the trackside engineers I know, even in electronics, are mechanical engineers, because they come with a good understanding. So I think the main thing is getting an understanding of the system, because we're past the point of just, going back to probably the 80s, 70s, we were just bolting an engine management system on to fuel inject an engine. We're past that point, and these cars are now a very highly integrated piece of kit. We're making compromises maybe to the motor because we can then get more out of the gearbox. It isn't just a case of individually getting the best out of it. So I think it's having a passion for engineering, having an understanding of the bigger picture. And certainly if you want to go trackside, I think most people would probably agree you need to go for a motorsport degree. But for design, getting involved in the design side of things, the powertrain, you can getting a mixed level of understanding of mechanical and electronics, I think is the best personally.
How essential is it, do you think, how essential is a degree in being a race engineer or a powertrain engineer or even a team principal? How much does a degree help you on your way, or is it not essential?
I'd say it's quite essential, because until you get to that level of education, you need to understand the fundamentals of what's happening to the car from a first principles level. These guys have all got it. they don't talk about it every day, and they don't look like boffins, but under the surface, they know exactly what's going on. We have that confidence in they can diagnose a problem quickly because they've had the education behind them to know that the fundamental basics of either vehicle dynamics or any numeric problems, be it down to control systems and software, they have that basis to know exactly how things work. And I think that's a very fundamental thing. When you have that at your core and you learn that at a young age when you're studying, you will apply it in your future life on a day-to-day basis without really knowing that you're applying it. And yes, we have software tools that help us do all those things, but if those tools break down or you need to develop those tools, which we also do in-house, all of those core skills are what you lean upon very heavily.
That's really interesting.
I was going to add in there, I think unfortunately, in some ways, a degree is a door opener. You need it to get the interview, to get the job. I think by the time you're at the level that we're all at, I was a bit of a layabout at university. I didn't really study properly. And I used very little of what I learnt there. So most of my job is based on experience. And I think that probably goes for most people here. So from a technical point of view, do you need a degree? No, I would say. I've seen some of the best people have been people who've just learnt on the job. Sometimes people have been mechanics and then worked up. And there's quite a few examples of fairly senior people in F1 who have started off as electronics technicians or mechanics. But as Vin said, unfortunately, I think there are two things. Firstly, teaching you the methodical approach, which is certainly something you learn at university, and it's that door opener. It's getting harder and harder for people to get interviews for jobs, and motorsport's just a good example of that because it's a popular area if you haven't got a degree.
Some really nice answers there. I think a lot of the listeners and viewers will be quite inspired and feel like they've got a bit more understanding there. So thanks, guys. While I pick one more question, Dilbag, how do you become a team principal?
Well, I think from my side, it's more of resources. So my job is to manage resources. So I would look at it like 3 different types of resources. It's human resources, find the right people for the team. Financial resources, get the right budget and manage the right budget. And third is technical resources, find the right partnership. So that's where I step in, is just looking after these 3 areas, because I can't make the car go any faster. Yes, I can pay the bills for the car to go faster, find the right talent to make them work together. And I think sort of be like the conductor of the orchestra, where you sort of put something together and try and get a symphony out of it. Yeah. But out here, as you know, it's a bit of an English and a bit of a French symphony, but it's quite nice.
I like that. It's very poetic. Okay, so this is a question actually, I think, for you, Cyril. Seems like we didn't get to see on the TV broadcast about Pascal's puncture at the Marrakesh E-Prix. Can you explain what actually happened?
Yeah, he was just in a fight with Sam Bird, and I think there was a bit of robbing going on. And after we passed Bird, I think Bird was kind of eager to get the places back, and unfortunately made contact with Pascal. And we were very unfortunate because actually we got hit right into the shredder valve. That's what gave us immediate puncture. So even though the contact was not massive, the way the contact happened, which was exactly on the tire valve, meant that we had a puncture straight away. So I don't believe they actually broadcast the contact between the 2 drivers. I'm sure you heard the radio though. It was quite colorful. You need a few beeps on that one, but yeah, I think they're very aggressive out there, and I think there's a lot of action happening in Formula E. But I think this is what makes the championship so interesting, and what makes it different than other series. For example, when after the first lap you can take a nap and wake up an hour and a half later, and then you know that nothing happened. It's not the case in Formula E, so I think that sometimes you get on the wrong end of it, but I think it's the DNA of the championship what's make it interesting. So I think we shouldn't change that, even though sometimes, like I said, you come on the wrong end of it. So
yeah,
but we come back stronger, and then Pascal will put a decent performance, and we'll bring some more silverware for the boss, because I can see he's giving me the big eyes, because there's a lot of pressure for deliver some good results. So yeah, we'll do that next race.
Nice, absolutely. Okay, we've got time for one more question, and this comes from Instagram. What is the most difficult thing to manage during the race? Who wants to jump on this one? I think you all probably have different areas you can comment on here.
System.
The system. Okay.
Yeah. System people in general. System are quite simple, but the system people, they're very
they're
very tricky. You know that you have to make the right request in advance and all that, and otherwise they get grumpy.
I would say is if something happens in the race that you're not expecting, like with Jerome in the first lap, we lost quite a lot of places.
Sure.
So from what was a very good first corner, we made up a place, but then down to turn 4 and 5, we lost about 3 or 4 places. It's then trying to work out how we're going to go forward from there. So it's when, I guess we called it a hiccup, occurs, then it's how to deal with that. So if the race runs to plan, then it's not easy, but it's a lot easier than when you have a problem or a hiccup come into the race. So.
Sure.
I think you can summarise it as that the hardest thing to manage is the pressure, and that's on all the individuals. The pressure that's on the drivers is the race engineer's job to try and manage and try and make the best out of a bad situation. The energy side is on the performance engineers to manage the pressure of making sure we've got the information we need, because sometimes the drivers don't give us the numbers we need, and he needs to make sure that he does get them out of them. So everyone here is king of management of pressure. It comes in lots of different shapes and forms and affects us all differently. But that's the key, keeping cool under all of that pressure to try and extract the best result you can.
Interesting, because I guess one of the hardest things about Formula E is you can prepare only so much because it has such an unpredictable nature. I guess the biggest stress is actually having to be able to react from these things that just completely out of your control that seem to happen almost every lap in this championship.
Yeah, and I think all drivers, no matter what they want to say after or before, the red mist comes in, so that these guys, Cyril and Tom, have got to try and temper that or understand how that manifests in their drivers to then say the right thing. There might be a trigger word, they might have worked on something in the deal to bring them back to the middle, and whatever that distraction was, make it temporary and focus on what the end result can be and make sure that's the best. So it's a big game. It's a big game of knowing which part of your emotions help you and which part of your emotions you need to keep under control, and using the people around you. I think in Formula E you need to do that more than in all the other types of racing I've been involved in.
Very, very interesting stuff. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining me and answering the questions, and for the questions themselves. The Passioneers sent us some cracking questions. Thanks very much for that. So yeah, that's it. That's a wrap for another episode of Straight Talk. If you did like the podcast, if you like listening to it, you like watching it, remember to subscribe and comment and let us know what you like about it. Any other questions you may have, send them in, and I'm sure they'll be answered in another podcast. The podcast is available on all of the normal podcasting apps, including Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, etc., as well, of course, as this video version, if you're watching right now, on YouTube. But I guess that leaves me to say until next time, thanks very much for watching.
Thank you.